I'll take you straight to when everything broke. Mid-morning, sun high, goats fussing by the rake, Emily laughing in that easy way she always did when the world still seemed gentle. Then tires crunched down our gravel lane, a shadow crossed the barn gate, and a voice cut sharp as vinegar. I kept my head bent over the busted hinge another second, hoping it would pass like all the other petty complaints from the HOA folks up the hill. But the voice didn't stop. Unauthorized livestock, improper gatherings, a stream of words that had no place on a farm. When I finally turned, I saw Mara Keene stride through our open gate and drive her boot into my pregnant wife's side. Emily's smile vanished mid-laugh. My wrench slipped to the dirt. For one stunned heartbeat, I heard nothing but the creak of the old gate and my pulse pounding like hooves on wood. In 2 strides, I was with Emily, one hand at her back, the other hovering, afraid to touch the spot Mara's boot had found. Fear of what it meant for the child she carried flickered in her eyes before she swallowed hard and whispered, "We're okay," steadying herself on the top rail. Behind me, Mara crossed her arms like a principal calling roll, announcing we'd violated livestock codes. Bold claim, since our farm sat 200 feet outside HOA land, ground my granddad fenced with sweat and a tamping bar long before any HOA existed. I didn't bother arguing. I went to the shelf, pulled down the old wooden radio box, brushed off feathers, and flipped the latch. I'd sworn I was done with that part of my life. But muscle memory's a stubborn thing. Thumb to the switch, voice low so Emily wouldn't hear my fear. Unit 4 to base. Assault on private agricultural land. Victim is pregnant. Request immediate response. A hiss of static, then the calmest voice in the world. Copy Unit 4. Trooper Hale, rolling code 3. Mara laughed like I'd ordered takeout, mocking the patch still hanging in my tack room. She had no idea that 4 minutes away was a man I'd once dragged from a burning truck. No idea that when I said Unit 4, dispatch still remembered who I was. Emily squeezed my hand, found a hay bale under the eaves. I knelt, matched my breathing to hers, slow in, slower out, and told her I had her. I had the baby. I had all of this. She whispered back, soft and strong all at once, "We're okay." Meanwhile, Mara turned her phone on, narrating like she was the victim, the hero, and the judge. Neighbors began drifting in. Mrs. Dorimple with her cane, P. Navarro still in welding gloves, a couple of kids coasting dirt bikes to the fence. Mara raised her voice for the camera, calling me washed up, Emily a faker, pointing at our gate like it was theater. Then came the rising wail of a siren, dust rolling, blue lights strobing through the lane. The cruiser didn't creep, it rolled straight in. Before the wheels stopped, Hale stepped out, boots on gravel, sunglasses flashing, the kind of presence that quiets a yard. He glanced at Mara, then at me, gave a slight nod like, "I've got this." He went first to Emily, crouched calm, asking if she needed an ambulance, if she felt pain, if the baby had moved. She answered, "Not yet." Not wrong. And yes. Just then the baby kicked, and Hale smiled like a man holding one bright thing in a storm of bad. Only then did he turn to Mara. "Ma'am, can you explain what happened here?" She started in, but he lifted a hand. "No, ma'am. I'm asking him first." I told it plain, the approach, her shouting, the kick, the boundary line, the deed in the barn office, the exemption letter, the judge's note. Hale took the folder, spread the parcel map on the tack table, tapped the yellow boundary, and looked over his glasses until Mara understood. Her rules ended at our fence. "Ma'am," he said, steady as winter, "this isn't HOA property. It isn't common ground. This isn't your jurisdiction." She waved the laminated sheet about fence heights and color palettes, nonsense about natural driveway tones that might have made me laugh another day. Hale didn't blink. "Ma'am," he repeated, "this is now a criminal matter." Step back. The crowd had grown, that small-town quiet hanging heavy, where everyone listens and no one's going to save you from your own mouth. Hale called in another unit, not because he needed backup, he could calm a bar brawl with a glance, but because paper trails prevent future fires. He gathered statements. Pete, too eager, demonstrated the angle of Mara's kick. When Hale finished, he issued citations, trespass, misdemeanor assault, and told Mara she could fight them in court. "If you remain on this property after this notice," he said levelly, "you'll be detained." She scanned faces for sympathy and found none. Just Mrs. Dorimple clicking her tongue, teens grinning like the video was already on Snapchat. You think that would have been her breaking point, the The moment to go home, shut the door, and face what she'd done. But not Mara. The next morning, Emily was asleep on the couch, hands resting on her belly. The house still smelled of chamomile tea. I glanced out the kitchen window, and there she was again, Mara standing just across the ditch on the HOA side. This time she wore a beige windbreaker, oversized aviators, and a cheap-looking badge clipped to her chest. Phone up, she launched into a fresh speech about environmental safety, unregulated animal waste, even the supposed airborne threat of wildflower pollen crossing into respectable neighborhoods. I walked to the gate, pointed to the painted boundary post, and told her to step back 5 feet. Slipped the little recorder Trooper Ricks had given me into my pocket and clicked it on. Mara leaned toward the goat pen with her clipboard, pretending she meant to measure something. That's when Colonel, our most stubborn wether, fond of chewing paper and plotting trouble, ambled over, sniffed the edge of her laminated rules, and tore off a bite. The sound Mara made was half squeal, half clarinet. She stumbled back, slipped on the wet grass, and landed in the ditch with a splash. Clipboard flew, phone skittered, frogs scattered like they'd rehearsed it. Pete happened to be driving by with a sack of feed, watched the whole thing, and laughed so hard he had to hang on to the fence. I didn't gloat. I picked up Mara's phone with 2 fingers like it might explode, handed it back, and suggested gently she head home and change. That afternoon Hale called. The judge had signed a temporary restraining order, and a deputy would come by to serve it. Turns out 3 other households had filed statements about Mara just this year. Picnic tables deemed aesthetic hazards, front yard tomatoes cited as too rustic, a wind chime labeled non-compliant. Hale told me to keep the recorder close. By sunset, the deputy had posted the order on our gate and taken photos. For the first time in 2 days, the yard felt normal again. Goats butting horns, chickens scratching under the porch, golden light spilling across the pasture. Emily and I sat on the steps with lemonade and talked baby names. She liked June. I liked Mabel. We agreed it ought to mean something steady, not pride, not vengeance, just quiet strength that holds. Court came quick. Assault on a pregnant woman doesn't wait at the bottom of the docket. Cedar Hollow Courthouse smelled of paper, floor wax, and a century of marriages and mortgages. That morning it smelled of nerves, too. Judge Wickham doesn't waste words. He listened in that still way that makes you tell the truth straighter. Our lawyer played the barn footage, Hale's body cam audio, and Pete's recording of Mara's tumble into the ditch. He handed over the parcel map, the exemption letter, and the restraining order. Mara's lawyer tried spinning it as stress, boundaries, community standards. Then Mara stood unasked, a neck brace she hadn't needed yesterday strapped on, and salted the air with alleged like repetition might conjure doubt. Wickham raised his hand. Ma'am, this is a courtroom, not a board meeting. Sit. When asked if Emily wanted to speak, she rose slowly, one hand on her back, and told the judge the truth plain. Feeding goats, Mara storming in, the kick, the breath knocked out of her, the baby's later movement, the tears of relief. No drama, just a straight line of fact. The silence afterward was heavy enough to hear dust settle. Wickham leaned back, folded his hands, and spoke with finality, reckless, unjustified, authority that did not exist. Guilty of misdemeanor assault and criminal trespass. Fines, probation, community service. Restraining order extended. Any future violation meant a cruiser ride and a night in a windowless room. Outside, neighbors waited with flowers and soft words. Pete tied a bundle with baling twine and said Colonel deserved a medal, which in our town is as good as getting one. As we drove past the HOA entrance, a flyer was tacked under the speed limit sign. Emergency meeting to remove Mara from the board. Sponsored by 3 names I knew, people she'd once cited for lawn chairs and flagpoles. Change doesn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it shows up on printer paper with a thumbtack. 2 weeks later, morning came quiet as it kept promise. No sirens, no shouting, just swallows stitching the sky and goats chewing like life is simple if you let it be. Emily stood in the doorway and said, "It's time." The way hikers point to a ridge and know they'll make it by nightfall. Our bag was already by the truck, 3 routes to Mercy General mapped out. The road was empty. In the delivery room, I held her hand and whispered all the little encouragements husbands do, though the real work was hers. And that afternoon, our daughter entered the world, fierce, perfect, and louder than any Eobila. We named her Juniper. Emily spoke the name aloud, and something rooted itself under my ribs. A tough little tree that can weather wind and snow and still smell like green life. When we brought June home, Pete had strung a crooked banner on the gate out of feed sacks and twine. Colonel stood like head of security. The restraining order still fluttered on the post, and tucked beneath it was a note in neat blue pen. Judge Wickham, congratulations on your daughter. Strength often arrives quietly. No signature. Just truth. A week later, a discreet for sale sign appeared in Mara's yard. At dawn, a moving van came and went. No waves, no farewell speech, just silence settling on a place that had been too loud for too long. I like to say that was the end. Peace restored, full stop. But anyone who's lived in a town like ours knows peace is a garden. You eat it every week. The new couple who bought Mara's house keep 2 old labs and a small patch of tomatoes that would have driven her wild. They wave from the porch and ask about eggs. Now, with June asleep on my shoulder and Emily planting marigolds by the steps, I think what we won wasn't just a court case. It was a line. A real, painted line between rules invented to boss people around and laws meant to keep them safe. A line we'll teach our daughter to see and to stand on. So here's where I hand it over to you. If you'd been at that barn gate when Mara came charging in with her clipboard and certainty, would you have shouted back? Or done what I did, reached for the radio, the folder, the slow machinery of law? Would you forgive the neighbors who got swept up in fear? Or clear the whole board and start fresh? Tell me where you draw the line, between order and overreach, between bylaw and decency. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own HOA war story, your own moment you stood your ground. And if you want to hear more from Cedar Hollow about the times we get it wrong and the times we get it right, hit subscribe. Because some days justice arrives with sirens, and some days it chews a clipboard and lands in a ditch. Either way, it's worth the telling.